Yeah. Now, Origin sides. It is that time of the year where the NRL just takes a back seat to the Origin. Michael Maguire named his first side, Matty. I'm wondering if anyone came close to naming their side around about how Michael Maguire has put his first side together. I like it. I think it's a good side. There is still some question marks over Nico, of course. And Liam Martin has been cleared of any damage, any tear in his hamstring. He left the field a couple of minutes into the second half down there at Shark Park on Saturday night. So the scans revealed no dramas, but I guess he's still got to tick some boxes before he is confirmed. 5 Panthers, 3 Roosters, 2 Manly players. We've got a new captain with Jake Trbojevic taking over from James Tedesco. Dylan Edwards. Well done, Dylan. Form has been undeniable. I thought the challenge from Teddy, the fact that he was in good form and the incumbent skipper, I thought they would have probably given Teddy the nod, but very happy to see Dylan there. He's been the best fullback, the most consistent fullback over the last 3 years, so certainly deserves his spot. We've got a Bulldog, a Dragon, a Cowboy, a Bronco, and a Raider, and we've got 6 on debut.
Okay, let's make it official. Let's go through this New South Wales team. I'll put it out there. We'll read through the list. Brandy's touched on some of the key elements. Fullback, Dylan Edwards. The wingers, Brian To'o, Zach Lomax. In the centres, Stephen Crichton, Joseph Swali'i. The halves, Jerome Luai wearing 6, Nico Hines in the 7, pending that calf. Up front, Jake Trbojevic, Payne Haas. Reece Robson is the starting hooker. Liam Martin, Angus Crichton, Cam McInnes, the back row. The bench reading, 14, Isaiah Yeo, Hamole Olakau'atu, Spencer Leniu, Hudson Young. Matt Burton is the 18th man. Luke Keary is on standby for Hines. Mitch Barnett could come in for an Origin debut should there be any hiccup at camp. He's in jumper 20. So the debutants, Dylan Edwards you touched on, Joseph Swali'i, Zach Lomax, Cam McInnes, Hamole Olakau'atu, Spencer Leniu. Now, no James Tedesco, no Arpi Coruscant, no room for Latrell or Cody out of South Sydney. Josh Adokar, not there either. So, boy, with debutants, with a new captain, with players missing out, there's 3 hours of fodder right there, Brandy, right there with the New South Wales team before we get to Queensland in a moment.
Yeah, look, great to see those players on debut, Matty, and I think, you know, when a new coach comes in, he wants to stamp his way of thinking on the team. Michael Maguire's gone for a team that will work their backsides off. He's gone for a bit of height in the outside backs, Swali'i and also Lomax, terrific under the high ball. Lomax and To'o will be good carries out of their own end, and we've spoken about the importance of that. Jake Trbojevic as the skipper. You know, Jakey bleeds blue blood if he's not playing for Manly. So, that doesn't seem to be, that sort of left field, that selection, that doesn't seem to be left field. Angus Crichton's form over the last month and a bit has won him a spot back in a New South Wales Blues jersey. Spencer Leniu was at his block-busting best on the weekend, Matty. And if there's someone that can lift a side with 3 or 4 runs, it's Spencer Leniu. And that's pretty important. So I like the team, and I've put the kit on. I've put a bit of kit on. I woke up this morning. I'm not a real fan of a vest, but that's all I could find this morning.
In the dusk at 4 a.m.
Yeah, that's all. Anyway, I'm here in the Blues vest. Go the Blues. Let's rev it up because I think we can get Queensland, and 2 reasons: Flegler and Tino aren't there. Flegler and Tino are 2 fantastic Origin props, and I think a bit of the magic might disappear from Queensland without those 2. The ownership in the middle, their athleticism, their aggressive nature, they're 2 very good Origin front rowers, and without them, I think that's where we can win the game.
Well, Greg Alexander, 6 games as a Blues player, the last 6 years as part of Brad Fittler's Origin coaching setup. I'm looking forward to tapping into your Origin expertise this morning over the next 3 hours. I encourage the listeners to get in contact with us. Great Southern Bank open line, 1300 01 1170. Blues fans, this is your team. Have your say on it. Get on the Edgewater Homes text line, 0457 736 736. Tell us what selection changes you would have made. We'll just go through a few more for New South Wales. Dylan Edwards. Now, you've spoken about him already, but James Tedesco, 8 years, 22 games uninterrupted. His form this year has been rock solid. And on the weekend, we called him 3 try assists, 2 tries as the captain, as the incumbent. As good as Dylan Edwards is, as excited as I am to see him wear the number 1 for New South Wales, he richly deserves it. I really thought Teddy had swung back into favour, especially hearing people say, well, now that Nathan Cleary's not there, it even lends more weight to the keep James Tedesco argument. Were you thinking yesterday that Teddy would be named despite you mounting a really good case for Dylan Edwards?
Yeah, I did think he'd get the gig. I really did. The fact that he was the skipper, he's playing better than he did last year. Last year wasn't James's best year, wasn't his best State of Origin series, but his form had turned around, and off the back of that, and the fact that he was the skipper, I did think he'd get the nod, but didn't surprise me that Dylan did, because it's that tight between them. They play a very similar game. They're both involved in the game non-stop. Attack, defence, they're both very good defensive fullbacks. I said this yesterday on Fox Sports. I said, if this was the first year of Origin, if Origin hadn't been played before and you were picking a side on form, you'd pick Dylan Edwards. Even though Teddy's form's been good, Edwards' form this year, and I think Dylan Edwards is a better player this year than he was last year, and that's saying something. The year before that, when he was the Clive Churchill medal winner. I just think that at the moment, if who's the better fullback, James Tedesco or Dylan Edwards? Well, I'd say Dylan Edwards. Dylan Edwards is a better. He's got younger legs. And I just think it's Dylan's time. So no surprise. If Teddy was there, if Dylan had missed out and Teddy was there, everyone would go, well, I can understand that too. So you're talking about 2 players where their form was very close. Teddy's got the history. Dylan hasn't got it. But if you're breaking it down and just said, well, okay, who is the better fullback? Dylan Edwards is at the moment.
I imagine you don't, Brandy, want players carrying concerns into Origin. Nico Hines with that calf. After Jerome Luai delivered that performance for Penrith against Cronulla, I wonder whether Michael Maguire was thinking, Jerome can be my 7 and Matt Burton can be my 6. I wonder how close that call was for Blues selectors.
Well, I guess it was close, but it doesn't look like it was close enough, because it seems like if Nico is no good, Luke Keary comes into the 7. So Michael Maguire always had in his mind, Matty, that he wanted to play Jerome Luai at 6, even though he did a great job. Like he was player of the match against the Sharks, and he was Penrith's best player against the Warriors last week, wearing the 7. But obviously Madge thought that his position was 6, and if Nico's not there, Luke Keary comes in, which is good too. Like, Luke's in good form. So I haven't got an issue with that, the fact that he's gone away from the Luai-Burton combination. I will say this, on the Luai-Burton combination, the reason Penrith bought Sean O'Sullivan some 4 years ago now was because the Luai-Burton combination didn't work at club level. We tried it a number of times. Maybe Madge had that in the back of his mind. The fact that Penrith went to buy a genuine 7 for when Nathan was out because Jerome and Matt didn't work. Now, we're 4 years on now, and Jerome's a better player. And obviously, looking at him play over the last couple of weeks against the Warriors and against the Sharks, he can handle that position of controlling a team, which will give Tigers fans a bit of insight of what they're getting next year. So I think that question has been answered by Jerome, that he can play 7 and run a team.
Listeners, one of the joys of my job is I get to bounce off so many experts, so many former players who know Origin inside out. And I will say that a common factor, they had one of the first people picked as being Arpi Coruscant, but Arpi's on that list of omissions. It's Reece Robson returning to Origin. He started game 2 last year. He came off the bench in game 3 last year. So he's an incumbent off the bench. He's starting in the 9 jersey. And Brandy, I suppose if he needs a breather, Cam McInnes goes into that hooking role and one of the bench players comes on in that middle forward role. But your thoughts about Reece Robson being the starting number 9 and Arpi being looked over?
Well, let's just talk about Reece Robson, who was in Blues camp in the 22 series, Matty, and then he played in the 23 series. Didn't play all the games, but obviously has the ability to handle it. He's rock solid. He's tough. He can play 80 minutes. He plays 80 minutes for the Cowboys. Appy's been in good form in a side that has now lost 8 straight games, the Tigers. But, you listen to Benji talk about Appy, and he is so important to the Tigers. It was a little bit of a shock. I had Appy in as my hooker, but Reece Robson's up to the job. And again, when players come in and you talk about players that are left out, the players that come in obviously can, I think, and looking through that side, can handle Origin footy. I know we've got 6 players on debut, so there is a question mark about them, but not that big a question mark. And the players left out. Josh Addo-Carr left out. Brian To'o and Zach Lomax will do a great job. Zach Lomax offers things differently to what Fox does. No one's got that genuine speed of Josh Addo-Carr, but Zach Lomax brings other things to the table that Josh doesn't.
Okay, the dark side. Good morning to all our Maroons fans. Hello, Queenslanders, and just a reminder, we will tap into Patton Heels, SEN Queensland, during the show. Michelle Bishop, Cameron Smith will give us a Queensland perspective as well. Another Smith on, Lindsay Smith from the Panthers. We'll speak with Nick Ashman, Brett Phillips on tennis. So lots of guests coming throughout the morning. Origin a common theme, but when it comes to the Queenslanders, you've touched on the fact, rather than going through the team, we first need to mention who they don't have. Cam Munster, Tommy Gilbert, Tino Fasul-Malawi, Tommy Flegler, Kalen Ponga, AJ Brimson as well. So while the Blues have injury concerns, so too Queensland. Here is Billy Slater's team. Reece Walsh, the fullback. Xavier Coates, Murray Taulagi on the wings. Val Holmes and the Hammer in the centres. Tommy Dearden confirmed for the number 6 alongside the captain DCE. Then the front row, Reuben Cotter and Lindsay Collins. Ben Hunt, the hooker. Jaden Sewer. Jeremiah Nene, Pat Carrigan leaving the bench, Harry Grant, Mo Fotuaker, Jermaine Hopgood and Selwyn Cobbo. So that team will be confirmed this morning. It's being reported as that is the 17 with Felice Kaufusi, the 18th man, Brendan Piakura and Ezra Mam also in the 20-man squad. You listen and notice I didn't say the name David Fifita there. There's the big talking point today out of the Queensland selections.
Yeah, I think most would be shocked that David Fifita isn't there, Matty. I thought Fifita was good yesterday in their win, and we haven't even touched on what happened yesterday. That was an incredible Sunday of rugby league yesterday with the Titans winning and the Warriors getting up. We'll get to that soon. But I thought Fifita had done enough, and the fact that he played in last year's series. So Billy didn't use him in 22, but played him last year, and he was getting back to his best footy last year. I thought that had continued enough for him to be in the side. It's still a very good back row in Jaden Sewer and Nane. Nane's been in good form. Sewer's been in good touch for the Dragons. Great to see Jermaine Hopgood make his debut. Mo Fotuaker comes into the side because of the absence of those 2 front rowers that we've already spoken about and how much they'll miss them. Selwyn Cobbo, interesting on the bench. He mightn't be used at all. Sometimes it's hard unless you get an injury to an outside back. Selwyn is there to cover all positions in the back line, but the halves. But they've got cover in the halves because they've got Ben Hunt and Harry Grant. So they do cover all positions. I don't know what we would do if we had a winger or a centre. We've got Sawali who can move to the wing, Crichton. So interchangeable. The 2 centres and the winger, Zach Lomax, can play anywhere. But I was surprised that David Fifita wasn't there. I could certainly find a place for Fifita. Bring him on if something special's required.
Their only debutant, Jermaine Hopgood. Now, part of his journey has been as a Penrith Panther, where he crossed your radar significantly. Jermaine Hopgood, he's long been described as an Origin player.
He's fantastic, and I guess, you know, you don't realise how good someone is and how much you'll miss them until they're gone. But he's been, you know, a mainstay of that Parramatta pack, and you know, knocked Madison out of the 13 role there, and he is an Origin player, Matt. He's just got that. He's got the look about him. He's got the toughness. He's got the skill, and he certainly he'll fit into that Queensland jumper well. The one that we are talking about, we have spoken about this morning, is the omission of David Fafita. I think most of us thought that he was playing good enough. He'd been involved in last year's series, but just doesn't look like he hasn't found a spot in the side.
No, well, that's what's being reported, isn't it? And just got to remind everyone, I'm not working with the Queensland side this year, like you, Brandy. So I'm not too sure exactly what
you can say what
Billy's
you want.
going to be going with. Yeah, exactly.
We can see, yeah.
So, but no, that's what's being reported, isn't it? That that Fafita's going to miss out. So I don't know. Like, I'm not too sure what Billy and the selectors are thinking there. He was part of the squad last year, and I don't know. Maybe they just think that those other guys playing in that same position are just going a little bit better at the moment. Guys like Nanai, Jaden Sewer, of course, who's been name's been tossed about to be potentially playing in that back row this year as well. As well as I think a guy that might find his way there is Jermaine Hopgood.
Well, Hopgood's in the 17.
Yeah, well, there you
go. That's no surprise either, Cam. He does seem that he's just made for Origin footy.
Yeah, well, he's playing in a side that's really struggling at the moment, and we've seen that, you know, over the last couple of weekends. But you know, when you watch him individually and his performances, it's incredible. Like the work that he gets through, and what he tries to, you know, how he tries to help his team out of this mess that they're in at the moment. You know, it's pretty special. Like, so I think that's the type of player that Billy was looking for. No matter the situation, no matter how his team's going, he's always putting in, you know, 8, 9, 10 out of 10 efforts. So that's where he's at the moment. So, but yeah, that's the big name, isn't it? That's the shock one that we're hearing that's going to be left out. But you know, I think Billy has spoken over the time that he's been in charge of the Queensland Maroons, is that, you know, like every player, no matter how many games you've played previously or what you're doing in clubland, you got to earn it. You got to earn the right to wear that Queensland jersey, and you know, those
just
guys
on selections. Just on selections, and we've had a couple of texts saying maybe Billy lost the vote amongst the selection panel, and I said, well, I don't think Billy would lose a vote. Billy's the coach, and if Billy really wanted David Fafita, he'd win that argument, wouldn't he? Is that like?
Well, yeah.
And how does it work in Queensland? There is a selection panel. Gene Miles, Darren Lockyer are involved in selecting the team.
Yeah, those two are the part of the selection panel with Billy. But as far as I'm concerned, or as far as I know, I'm pretty sure it's Billy. Billy tells Gino and Lockie, look, this is the team that I'm after. And if there's any sort of issues around maybe one or two players, then they have that discussion. They have a debate, yeah. So that's the way it's worked in the past couple of series when I've been involved. And, you know, those guys are always very supportive of what Billy is after. At the end of the day, boys, like that, he's coaching. So he's got to take that team into this series, or particularly into this first game, and be happy with the 17 or 18 players that he's taking onto that field. Yep. And he can trust that he's going to get the job done for him.
So if he feels strongly enough about picking a player or not picking a player, he will then mount an argument to the other selectors,
absolutely,
Gene Miles and Darren Lockyer, and say, well, this is the reasons why I either want him or I don't want him. And the coach has to have what he's going.
He can't have a player in that 17 that he doesn't want in the team.
That doesn't happen.
And Cam, you're not part of this Maroon setup this year, as you've specified. So I'm standing by with the clickbait headline, Maroons murder, Smith slams Slater. So I'm just waiting for it. But 259 has said, along those lines, the most notable omission for Feta must have been words between he and Billy or some issue from last year we don't know about. On the face of it, it's just bizarre, notwithstanding that Sewer has been in good form. And he adds that Hopgood, he believes, has been picked on his 2023 form. So there is lots of discussion regarding this Maroons team. We've touched on no for Feta. The bench is interesting. Harry Grant, he might start yet with Ben Hunt coming back to the bench. Mo Fodawaker, Jermaine Hopgood, Selwyn Cobbo. Now, Brendan Piakura, Ezra Mam were talked about. They're in the 20, but they're not in the 17 we believe will be named. So what about you start with that bench? Grant, Fodawaker, Hopgood, Cobbo. Do you raise an eyebrow at that?
No, not really. No, I think if you look at the past couple of series that the Queensland side has gone out and won, it's worked really well with particularly the Harry Grant situation coming off the bench. Now, I know he got the start. He got the number 9 jersey in Game 3 last year. New South Wales were too good in Game 3, and they deserved that win. So the way it's really worked is that, with Ben Hunt, I feel as though he's the best utility player in the competition, right? Because he covers your halves. He can play 9. He can play a bit of 13 as well. You could chuck him in the back row if you had to, if you really got desperate. But I think it works really well with Harry coming off the bench because of it just keeps him out of those opening exchanges. Because if you put him out, you set him out there to start the game, he'll make 20 tackles in the first 20 minutes. And then all of a sudden you're just trying to get him through the rest of the game. Whereas you bring him on fresh at the 20-minute mark, which Billy's done in the past 2 series, it really gives an opportunity to lift the tempo of the footy side and to expose, some tiring Blues forwards in the middle as well. So that's worked really well for Queensland in the past. So I think he's going to stick with that plan. Mo Fodawaker, I feel, is playing extremely well for the Titans. What he provides, and we've seen this last year, fellas, when he come off the bench for Queensland, he provides a lot of energy coming off the bench. Quite a lot of impact coming on into the middle of the field. Jermaine Hopgood, we just spoke about him. Selwyn Cobbo, I guess, is the one where people will be thinking, well, geez, that's a little bit strange selection. Why not the 4th forward? If you look at the last couple of series, pretty much every game that's been played, so all those 6 games, Queensland have suffered an injury to an outside back, and they've lost outside backs, relatively well early in the piece, Queensland, they've had to make a reshuffle of their lineup. So Ben Hunt was playing in the centres at one stage. I think was it Ruben Cotter? I think had to spend some time in the centres. Well, defensively had time in the centres. Like it was just quite a big reshuffle. Whereas I think Billy's thinking Selwyn Cobbo, he's in great form at the moment. He's a big body. So if there's any issues with fullback, wing, centre, he goes straight in. And if needed, you could chuck him in the forward pack. He's well and truly over 100 kilos. He's got great size. He's got great mobility. So I think that's a pretty good option for Billy.
Yeah, and you only have to look at the New South Wales have suffered the same sort of injuries. Recently, Cam,
yes,
and it can be costly if you don't cover an outside, if you don't have someone that can fill in the outside backs, and we've seen that through the NRL competition this year, Matty. Centres going down, and all of a sudden, we saw it on Thursday night with the Dragons, with Tom Eisenhuth having to play in the centres, and the Dogs just the Dogs just went down that side. We saw it yesterday. Now it wasn't because of injury, but Desi moved Beau Firma into the centres. He couldn't handle Reece Walsh. Just couldn't handle the speed, and so you can't have a back rower exposed by, and I'm talking more New South Wales. Reece Walsh coming around the back is panic stations for edge defenders. It really is. You can see it in their eyes. Oh my God, here he comes! Look how fast he's running. How am I going to stop him? It has to come into consideration when you're talking about picking a side.
Yeah, and
definitely.
And the last couple of years too, you really have to cover all your bases, particularly when it comes to Origin, because it's just been carnage, hasn't it? Like the last couple of years there's been injuries, but also HIAs.
Yep.
Both teams have lost players to HIAs, both in the backs and in the forwards. So you need to cover all bases when you're thinking about that bench lineup, and it can become so crucial. Like it can make the difference in the result with guys that you select on that bench and how you use those guys throughout the game.
And just to really spell it out, you're right. If any of the back five get injured, then Selwyn Cobbo comes on. If anyone in the half gets injured, then Ben Hunt goes to the halves and Harry Grant plays big minutes. And if those forwards get injured, you got Mo Fodawaker and the worker who is Jermaine Hopgood on the bench. So it's coverage everywhere for Billy Slater. Cam, the New South Wales team features 6 debutants. We've spent plenty of time going over the many varied talking points this morning. When you look at that New South Wales team, the 6 first-timers, the other controversial selections, what jumps off the page at you?
Oh, well, listen, I'm going to be honest. I wasn't surprised by many of the names, or any of the names really, that were in there. I guess the biggest one was the omission of James Tedesco. I think that's the biggest shock for everyone. Given that there wasn't a whole lot of talk about it, I think people were still thinking, well, look, he's going to get a shot. He's the incumbent skipper. He's the current Kangaroos captain. You got to remember that. But now with Dylan Edwards in the form that he's been in, there was a huge push, right? There was a huge push for him to be there, and it's deserved. Like he's been the fullback and a huge part of why Penrith has been able to win 3 consecutive premierships. And he performs every week. There's no question about his performance. So for me, I think that was the one that just sort of jumped off at me, was just the surprise, I guess, that there was no talk about it. Maybe Madge has had a conversation with James. I'm sure he would have, given that he has been the skipper for the past 5 or 6 years. I think it has been. But outside of that, it's a strong football side. The thing that when I read the names and I sort of visualise the players when I'm reading the names, is that this is a side that's a very hard-working side. So he's picked players in there that it's not all about the flashy plays and all that sort of stuff. It's about grinding out 80 minutes of football, and no matter the situation that arises throughout these games, like he can rely on these players to turn up every single moment. Like when you look at guys like Cam McInnes, typical worker, will do everything he can to get a victory for the Blues. He'll tackle his heart out. He'll take carries. Dylan Edwards, the same thing. It's a good football side. It's a good football side. The challenge for Madge, though, is having those 6 new faces and getting them all on the same page in the 10 days, in that short space of time. Particularly with, is there still a question mark over Nicho Hines' fitness?
I think there is. They sort of it looks like it's more favourable that he will be right, Cam. But a calf injury that kept him out 2 weeks ago has now re-emerged. So,
and Craig Fitzgibbon said he's going to be on modified training to start this week. So he'll be modified training to start the Blues Origin preparation.
No, I thought, because we were chatting yesterday on the panel before the side was announced, and I think we all agreed. We said, well, Madge with his first Origin series, first team, he would want everyone on the field from day one, because you don't get that many days. Like when you break down the 10 days before the game, you might only have sort of 3 big field sessions, and so there's a lot to squeeze in. And if your halfback isn't ready to go right from the start, that's in a new team, new combinations. That makes it tough.
I reckon. Look, the Blues aren't my side, and I've got nothing to do with them. But you would like to think that if Nicho's not ready to go by Wednesday, so you got a week prep, you make the call then, don't you? I think so. That's what I would assume. I was the same.
I reckon, Cam. Well, we're not talking about you. Like, we're not talking about Cameron Smith having, coming in with a slight calf injury and resting for a week. That's got, the runs on the board, played Origin, know what it's about. We're talking Nicho, who's come off the bench.
Key position, limited minutes in Origin with a calf niggle. So Luke Keary there in jumper 19 on standby should Nicho not come up. You mentioned that there's no James Tedesco, Cam. There's no Arpi Coruscant. There's no Josh Addo-Carr. Cody Walker was another one mentioned. And Latrell Mitchell was asked in the media conference over the weekend, are you available for the Blues? Now, he danced around the answer, but sort of insinuated, yes, I am. Wanted to be humble about it. The coach, Ben Hornby, came straight in. We're all available. They're all available.
Yeah, right, okay.
But Latrell's not picked. So how will the Maroons react to Latrell, who can be divisive, whose form hasn't been where it can be, but we know how damaging he is on his day.
Yeah.
How will the Maroons react to his non-selection?
I think it's, well, with all due respect, I don't think they'll give it too much air. I think they'll be more concerned about those guys that have been picked. And you look at, their back line, it's a strong, powerful back line. Like we've spoken about Dylan Edwards, but then you go to To'o, Stephen Crichton, Suoli'i, Lomax. Like that, they are big bodies and can do a lot of damage with the football. And on top of that, like, they defend strongly as well. So look, it's a good lineup. Looking across it, and you go, well, look, they've picked guys that are playing well individually, but also the majority of them, they're in sides that, excuse me, that are doing really well at the moment. Like, they're all confident, they're all playing well. It's going to be a great first matchup. I think the biggest question mark and the issue for the Blues at the moment is what we just spoke about, is the health of Nico Hines, and how long do they give him? They've got to make the call sooner rather than later. Like, they can't wait until the weekend and go, well, look, we've been waiting around for him all week, and then now he's not going to come up. I think they just got to make the call early, get the team settled, and understand what direction they're heading in with the players that they have.